and disintegrate. Years roll along and fade, don't let them slip away. Right here, right now, today, these are the good old days. Right here, right now, today, hey, these are the good old days.
In 1981, when Masters of the Universe was released, the mythology was based on the mini comic books found inside the figures. Quickly after that, DC Comics released a line of comic books, which introduced some more mythology, most famously the Prince Adam idea. Now, when the Filmation TV show came out, that added a lot more to the mythology. So it really had a mixing pot of a lot of ideas, and sometimes there was continuity errors, and we didn't care. We loved the toys, we loved the show, it didn't matter. But it did create some continuity errors that you couldn't help but see. One of which was Snake Mountain. Snake Mountain in the TV show looked very different than the Snake Mountain toy we got. And the reason for this was because the Snake Mountain toy was based on an earlier prototype of the Jungle playset. But to save time and to save money and to get the Snake Mountain to market quickly, Mattel just used that old design and doctored up a little bit. And again, we didn't care. We loved Snake Mountain in the show, and we loved the Snake Mountain playset. Now, the one glaring omission in the Snake Mountain playset, which was crucial in the show and featured almost every episode, was Skeletor's Skeleton Throne. We never got a toy version of that. In recent years, Super 7 has put out a Skeleton Throne in their massive, deluxe, and very expensive Snake Mountain playset. And it's awesome. But it's to the scale of the Masters of the Universe classic figures, not the classic vintage figures. So, I was in a local dollar store the other day, and I picked up some skeleton Halloween decorations. I cobbled together my own Skeleton Throne for Skeletor. So I put some pictures of that on social media, and there was a number of people asking for a tutorial about how they can build their own. So today I'm going to show you how I built my very own Skeleton Throne.
I never, ever do anything for goodness sake.
Okay, so the two things we're going to need to build our throne are a skeleton spider and this skeleton bird. I found these at the Dollarama in Canada. They're $1.25 each, and for that amount of money, this is a really, really fun build.
Not in this body.
All right, so the first step we're going to do to build ours is we have to take apart this bird, the skeleton bird. So the first thing you do is just pop off his head. It's easy enough. And then pop out the jaw. Again, we're going to need both of these things for something later. And then he's got these articulated wings that kind of flap, but they just pop out like that. And then there's one little screw here at the base of his spine. We're going to take it right out of his hip bone, and we'll be all set to go. So once you have the screw taken out, you can just pop the screw out of his spine, put that aside, and then we're going to start with this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to nip off at the knees here, or I guess the top knees here, and we're going to take this hip bone and we're going to cut it right off these legs. And again, a little pair of plastic nippers will work just fantastic. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to flip this around, this hip bone around. We're going to glue it to the inside of the bottom knees, and that's going to become the front of Skeletor's seat, and those are going to become the beginning of the armrests for the throne. So I just use hot glue, and I stick those together. Now, once you have that glued together, that gives us our base. So the next thing we're going to need to do is, with our bird main body here, we need to take this rib cage apart. And this rib cage is actually just two pieces, and you should be able to just pull it apart, and then you have two pieces of the bird. So we're going to take this piece here, and this is going to become the base of Skeletor's seat. Now, there are these little pins on it, and so I like to just cut those off because we don't need them. Okay, and so when all those are cut off there, we have a nice little rib cage to work with. And this is going to be the basis of our seat for our throne. So what we're going to do now is we're going to glue this in right there. So that's kind of going to be where it sits. So just put some hot glue along these inside bones,
And that should sit in there just nicely. Okay, so once we have the rib cage glued in, you'll start to see that it's sloping down a little bit. The whole, if you're doing it right, the whole thing is kind of on an angle. Don't worry about that. That'll be fixed in another step. So now that we have our seat done, Skeletor's throne had these big kind of tusk-looking bones coming out. We're going to take a look at that. So now none of these skeletons have any big tusks coming up the side like that. But the spider does have these 4 legs. So we're going to nip these 4 legs off, and they're going to become our stand-in kind of big tusk bones. I'm just going to cut the 4 of those off. So now that we have our 4 spider legs here, what I'm going to do is glue the 2 pairs together, just to kind of give it a little bit more depth and a little more interest when you're looking at it. Okay, now that we have our 2 pairs of spider legs glued together, and that's I like to kind of glue them staggered a little bit like that. And if you have a better idea, or you think that you have just do what you think is best. This is just all for fun, and there's already been some people that have posted their own versions of it after I posted mine. So if this, again, it sparks your creativity anyway, just go nuts and send me pictures. I want to see all of the skeleton thrones that this creates. So now that these are done, we're going to glue them underneath here and attach them to the armrest there. So I'm going to glue one on each side, and we'll see how that looks.
Oh, you flatter me, Comet Keeper.
Okay, so now that we have our 2 tusks here ready to go, and I call that just a lack of a better term, we're going to put a connecting bone between the knuckle here and this armrest. And we're going to get those bones from the back of the spider's legs. So this piece here and this piece here are the perfect size to go between there. So I'm just going to cut those off and get them in there. So we're just going to go like this. All right, so after you cut those apart, you're left with these 2 middle leg bones here. And so like I said, we're just going to attach those from the knuckle to the front of the armrest, like that. All right, and once you get those bones in there, you can see it's starting to take shape. Now, the cool thing about this project is because nothing is super symmetrical with these decorations that we have, it really takes on organic kind of life of its own, regardless of how hard you try. So yours is gonna differ a little bit just in the way that we cut things, we glue things, but it really starts looking pretty cool pretty quick.
I care for no one and no one cares for me.
Okay, so the next part we're gonna do is the back of the chair. And so we're gonna use the other part of this rib cage for that. We're gonna flip it around, we're gonna set it on there just like that and glue it there. However, we're gonna modify this piece first. So first off, we're gonna cut just under here to get this tailbone off. That's funny, tailbone. I didn't even try to make that joke. It just happened. That is a dad joke if I've ever heard one, but wasn't intentional. Something like that. Once you pick up your flying away rib cage, we need to modify it a little bit. So first, what I like to do is separate the connecting pieces, connecting all the ribs together. It allows you just to move around these ribs a little bit easier without having to move the whole rib cage. And so it makes it a little easier to glue them into place later. And then, this is just a trial and error that I've learned from doing the first one. Take this bottom rib right off. We don't need it. Perfect. And now you can see you can kind of splay those out a little bit, how we're going to do that later. But for now, we're going to glue this right onto there like that. All right, so here is our throne so far. It's again starting to take a little more shape each time you do it. Now inside there is some little plastic remnants from where it came out of the mold. If they bother you as much as they bother me, you can just pull them out. But yeah, it's starting to take shape. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our wings and we're going to just cut along these lines here to separate this part of the wing from this part of the wing. Okay, so now we have our two wings and our two wing bones there. And so we're going to start building the wings of the chair. And then we're going to glue these wings on right like that. Okay, now that we have our wings glued in place where they need to be, the next part is these bones here that were left over from the wings. And they have this little button on here where they used to plug into the bird's back. And so we're going to put a little bit of glue on that button and put them right in between that slot between the fourth and fifth wing rib almost, if you will. And they're going to sit straight up like that.
That's the way I like it.
Our next step, now that we have our wing bones in place, is to attach our wing bones to the spine. And how we're going to do that is, this is the only thing you got to be a little bit tricky with the whole process. So we're going to cut the back legs off of this spider. Just like that. And now what we're going to do is cut halfway up this bone. I'm going to take this part and put it aside because that's going to be our horn for our skull on top of the throne. But again, right here, and just cut it right in the middle of that bone. And then when you have these two bones left over, we're going to use those to join these two bones here. So what we're going to use next is the tailbone that we had earlier. I would just trim the top a little bit so it's a little smoother for our headrest to go on there in a little bit. Doesn't need to be perfect because it's not going to be seen. It's just if it's smoother, it makes it a little easier to work with. So what we're going to do is take our two middle bones, and we're going to squeeze them together. We're going to lay them inside the spine like that and glue them into place there. Okay, so now that we have the tailbone installed properly, the next thing to do is get the skull that goes on top. And to do that, we're going to use our friend here, the spider. And we're going to cut off his head behind here, and we're going to cut off his two bigger tusks. So it'll just be kind of this little skull-looking guy that'll go on top there. Okay, so you just have to pull this apart is the easiest way to get his head how you want it. So that just kind of pulls off like that. And then I'm going to cut with the nippers around the neck joint here. So now that we have our skull cut the way we want it to, we're just going to rest or glue it on top of there, just kind of like that. Now that we have the headpiece glued in, we're going to take the front of those spider legs. We're just going to glue them onto the side, and those are going to be the skull's horns. And we'll be all set to go. Okay, now that we have its horns glued into place, it looks like we're just about done, but there's one more step, because as you know, if you follow the directions, even a little bit close, it is top heavy. It falls over, and again, it really leans back quite a bit. So what I like to do is I take that bottom piece of the bird's jaw, and we're going to glue it to the underside here as a prop to hold it up, and it's going to become like a tripod stand. And that's what's going to hold it in its upright position and give it a little more strength. All right, and once our tail bone there, or jawbone, whatever you want to say, is in place, it stands up exactly like it should. Now to finish it off, before you put your Skeletor on there, I just cut a piece of material. Ideally, I'm going to get some fake faux fur at some point. But you put that right there like that, and it kind of finishes it off. And you can put all Skeletor right in there, and he is ready to just yell at all of his minions.
Now there you go. There's our Skeletor Skeleton Throne build. Now if you want to try this at home, it's a fun little build, but you got to act fast because these decorations will only be around for the next 30 days. So get out there, get your decorations, and give Skeletor a place to sit. We'll see you next time.